could listen to our conversation. Philipp and myself, we know each other for some time, and that is probably due to the fact that I'm a dinosaur. Philipp is a junior dinosaur, but he is effectively on the subject, which is very intriguing. I remember when I started, the first 3 programs that I installed was Oracle, version 5, RPF, RPT for reporting, and Forms. Now, if you look back, Forms was actually the idea of having a 4GL to create applications. And over time, this is still running. I'm surprised to see that. But a few years ago, and that's more than 10, significantly more, SQL Developer came up. A fully model-driven thing, fully metadata-driven, and therefore easy to extend. And this is exactly the turf of Philipp. Philipp works for Trivatus, one of our valued partners and sponsors of SOUG. And more importantly, he works not just for the sake of customer projects, but also in a community. You can see his contributions on Git and other places, and you will see him as a speaker in many public conferences. Today, we have the pleasure to listen to him, how he extends SQL Developer. I know there is many dimensions to go for, and I'm really curious to see what kind of extensions Philipp will present to us. As you might have heard, he will run to some of this section today a video, and please follow the ideas and guidance of Philipp. Raise your hand, ask your questions, because SQL Developer is meant to make you productive. And having said that, it's up to you, Philipp, on the stage to rock the show.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So let's get started. A few words from my side. I think I'm a dinosaur too. My first version was also version 5 Oracle and SQL Forms 2.0. So that's quite old stuff. I'm a developer and I do a lot of stuff with SQL Developer recently, with Java, with databases. And that's why I'm doing this talk. Yes, I prepared a demo. A demo I run the first time as a video. I usually do that stuff live. But the idea is that you may ask questions during the session, and I will have 9 minutes during that demo to look at these questions and answer them. And of course, at the end, you have again some chance to raise your hand and ask the questions directly. So let's get started. SQL Developer, I guess all of you know SQL Developer, have already used this tool. But I want to just highlight some facts. The product is quite old, 15 years, it's quite old, but this has pros and cons. You maybe see it when you look at the UI, it's not that fresh that other UIs are, but the advantage is that we have a rich IDE with a lot of functionality. That's for sure on the pro side. The other stuff is the architecture. So SQL Developer is based on JDeveloper, and it was designed from scratch to be extensible. So SQL Developer is not a single product, it's a conglomeration of a lot of extensions. And all the extensions I'm going to show you today are used also within the product itself. Another thing to highlight is that SQL Developer is free, and we get nowadays about 2 to 4 releases per year. It's a bit less releases, I guess, with all these cloud releases of SQL Developer and ORDs that it will be difficult to keep up with the quarterly releases. So another thing I'd like to mention with SQL Developer is that you can download it for free, of course, but you should download it. I see a lot of questions where people are using version 3 or version 4, or very old versions, and have problems simply due to the fact that they are using old versions. So it's simply to install. Basically, you just can unzip it and in a local drive and you're done. So if you're allowed to do that on your company laptop or desktop computer, do that. And if you're not allowed, find someone who is allowed to update your SQL Developer. And another thing to mention is that there is a quite good official documentation. You find that on the website, like the Oracle database documentation, and it's also included in the product itself. But there you find on the website also a variant to download it as a PDF if you like. So that's it. So what type of extensions do we have in SQL Developer? I don't cover all in details, but I just want to show you what we have. The first type of extensions are called snippets. They are just some stuff, a window you can open with a group of snippets, for example, analytical functions or character functions. And then you click on such a function and drag it in your code. So if you don't remember the syntax, you don't have to open the SQL Developer manual. You can drag and drop them in your code. There are also third-party products like UTPL SQL, which also add some groups of snippets. So you may compose the stuff like Lego and build your annotations. And of course, you can just add your own group of snippets. So that's one way to extend SQL Developer. Another one is code templates. This is quite similar. The difference is that you don't drag and drop some code from one window to your code section. You write your code in your code section and you type in, for example, SSF and control space. And then you have the ability to copy a template into your code. Like here, it's a simple template, selects T star from a table, and you see here a placeholder. You get the chance with tabs to replace this placeholder. That's another option to extend your SQL Developer. Also, UTPL SQL comes with some own code templates, but you may extend them with the ones you'd like to have. Then, of course, we have these big Java extensions. I show here one of the Trivadis extensions. That's PL SQL COP, where you can validate your code according guidelines. And you see the power here, what you can do. You create own windows, you can interact with existing code editors. It's almost limitless because it's designed to be extended. Then the last extension I show in this chapter is OddGen. OddGen is a community-driven code generator. It's a plugin in SQL Developer, and it allows you to write generators in PL SQL, in Java, and very soon also in JavaScript. So you can extend your SQL Developer with your own code generator. In fact, it's just something which generates text. Here's a silly example on this screen where, based on the famous EMP hierarchy, there will be created a report on the right side. That's another way to extend SQL Developer. But the topic of this talk today are user-defined extensions built with XML and with no Java at all. So you just have, what you need is some text editor, and you are in the end able to extend your SQL Developer. So what are the types of XML extensions within SQL Developer? These are 4 types: report, editors, navigator, and actions. And here I highlighted a link to XML schemas where the structure is defined. I will not show this schema in detail because it's not really suited to do that during a talk. I will show the stuff by example. But what is really interesting is that we have several schemas defined. And when you look at the first 2, you see a report is based on the displays, SD, and editors as well. So it looks like these 2 are very, very similar. In fact, they are almost identical. And the only extension you can build with an editor within SQL Developer is reports. So therefore, reports are really an important and from my point of view, underestimated extension type in SQL Developer. So I will show that in more detail very soon. And editors are very similar. Then we have two others. Navigators, when you have the connections window, you have the possibility to add there an additional node, a recursive node, in fact, and it's a bit different. But it includes also a part, a subschema called query XSD, which is also used here. So you have a lot of similarity in the first three. And then we have something very powerful. These are actions where you can add context menu entries and with a dialog, and you can run even JavaScript from there. This is the set of extensions you have in SQL Developer based on XML. So let's start with reports. How do reports look like? I have two examples here, and basically I think you already seen them. The famous tabular view table grid we see in SQL Developer very often. In this case, it's a parent-child report, and we have in fact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 childs here. That's a report. In fact, it's one from Apex, where you see the pages and some details of the pages. Another one here is on the right side. That's a graphical representation of ASH statistics, where you see at this point, it's, you know, we get some IOs, whatever. And you cannot do everything with XML extensions, because everything which is available under these all reports here on the above section, like the application expression node, must be a Java extension. In fact, it's a wrapper of an XML extension. It's not a lot of Java code, but you cannot do that with plain XML only. But what you can do is add your reports, share them under the node shared reports, and that's possible with XML. And then they are read-only here only. And the last section where you can plug in your reports is here on the user-defined reports. Then you work there within SQL Developer and may create your reports and run them and edit them, of course. So how do you create reports? There are several ways. One obvious way is you go under the user-defined reports node, right-click and say new report, and then you fill all the stuff you're asked for. Another very nice approach is that you look at all the reports and you go there in the existing ones and you say, I'd like to write a similar report like this one, and you go there and say, right-click and copy. And then you go to the user-defined report section, paste the report there, and you right-click on the report and say edit. And then you can do your amendments. You can look how these reports are written. So that's really a nice feature to create the report instead starting from scratch. And then another option is that when you see a grid somewhere in SQL Developer, every grid is based on the same Java classes. And in all these grids, you find the option here, save grid as report. So when you see somewhere a query, it says, oh, it's interesting, how is this done? Then you just can say, right-click and save that as report, and you will be able to explore the query behind it. Then when I create such a report, there are several options you have. We've seen previously table and chart. I don't want to go into detail. What I want really to highlight is this section here. We have the ability also to run SQL Plus, or better SQL CL scripts. That's something people do not know, and especially DBAs are surprised to know that, because DBAs I have over the years gathered some SQL scripts they'd like to execute, and they may easily integrate them within SQL Developer. I will show that show that later. So you choose basically here your style, and based on that, on the next screen, what you here enter in the SQL query section is in fact really a SQL query, or it's an anonymous block, or it's a SQL Plus, or better, a SQL CL script. So basically, to create the report, you have just to enter these two things, how you would like to represent it, and you enter a query or a SQL CL script. That's it. Everything else is optional. So what is optional? What have we also to configure? Something I forgot here. There's also a tiny checkbox here, which allows you to click it, and then you are able to write query variants. Query variants are especially interesting if your queries are based on the data dictionary, and you have and you want that this report runs, let's say, on 9i, and it runs also on 19, and it runs on 20, and on 20 you have some columns you would like to include also. So you may create variants of your select statement and have just one report. So that's a nice feature, especially if you're querying the data dictionary. Then another option is to create own context menus. So if you have a table grid and you'd like to navigate somewhere to the code, so the definition of some object type, then you may define three columns in your query. The alias of this column have to be SDF link owner, link type, and link name. As soon as SQL Developer sees that in the report, they will be hidden, and it will create for you such a go-to entry in the context menu. That's nice. Another option very similar to the go-to menu are hyperlink columns. They are similar but not identical. You really create a single column, and this single column has a certain structure. It has to start with SQL Dev column link column. And as soon as SQL Developer detects that during retrieving the result rows, it will create such a link. You also have the option to define owner, object type, and name, but additionally, you also may define a line and a column. So it's possible to query something, and when you have errors or something like that, you may position, open an editor, a PL SQL editor, and jump to the right line, to the right column, and open it up here. And what's here highlighted in orange is a callback Java class, which is used to open this editor. And this shows also the power. If you are developing in Java, you may override this class and define something else and open up your own extensions and navigate there, whatever you like. So it's really, really extensible. Then we have the option, instead of writing a gauge chart, we may have a gauge column. Maybe you have seen reports regarding table spaces, how full they are, and you may use such a pseudo column where you define some values where it will be shown in green, yellow, red. That's another way to enhance your report. And of course, if I have a report, I would like to enter some parameters. In this case, I'd like to enter the application ID of an Apex application, and then it will be queried and then I get data only for that particular application. And of course, that's no magic there. I get a special bind variable. It's named like this bind variable in the column before, and everything has to be uppercase, and you can put it somewhere in the where clause, and you're done. And an additional option is to create parent-child reports. We've seen that previously with the Apex report. And for a child report, it's quite easy to define it, because all columns of the parent are automatically bind variables. So you just may use them and you don't have to define, oh, what are my link columns. I just use them as bind variables in my where clause, and I'm done. So it's really simple to define child reports. An alternative to child reports are drill down reports. Parent-child is limited to 2 levels, so cannot create the grandchild report. That's not possible. But what you can do are drill down reports. So you create the report and drill down to the next report, drill down to the next report, and so on. And that's another option, is to combine a set of reports which are associated. And the last thing are PDF settings. I don't show this slide really because of the PDF settings, because I honestly never use it. But what's interesting is when you have a table grid, you have several options to export your information. You may export it in CSV, delimited, JSON, XML, as a loader, as Excel, as HTML, and one option is PDF. So you have a lot of default actions you can execute on your result table grid. And that's what I wanted to mention here. And in the end, when I have defined my export, and then I can export it. I can save it, in fact, as an XML format. Typically, I do that for a single report when I want to store it in a version control. But I may also save a group of reports, or a group of a group of a group of reports. There are unlimited number of nested folders you may create, and you may export all of your user-defined reports in a single file. And that's for sure simpler to share these reports. The other option is to import the reports. It's called here open reports. From my point, it's not really open. You really load it into another store within SQL Developer, and you save all your user-defined reports in a file called user-reports.xml. This user-reports.xml is used by all SQL Developer installations. So if you are running 2020, 22, and 19.4, 19.2 in parallel, all the SQL Developer installations will use the same user-reports.xml. And where the heck is this ID pref here on my system? It really depends on your system, on your personal directory, and you may look it up when you go into the dialog of the about dialog of SQL Developer, and you may enter here ID pref, and then you see where my preferences are stored, and there I find this how is it called? User-report.xml. Good. How does the XML source look like? It's the complete report. It's a simple report. Everything is visible except the PDF section. I've reduced that one. What you see here is the select star from all objects, order by blah, blah, blah. And I've defined it as table style, horizontal view, that's it. So it's easy to extend it also on within a normal editor. You don't have to do that in SQL Developer itself. When you have such a XML file with a report within, then you may share it. And to share it, or to import it in SQL Developer and make it visible under the shared reports, you have to define an entry for every XML file. Is the report, the type of the extension is a report, and where I find this file. So this way I may import it. Unfortunately, you have to restart SQL Developer because SQL Developer reads this information at startup just once. And that's a bit of a hassle, but usually you don't install that many times. So that should be okay. This was reports. I will show that soon live. But let's look first at editors. I said editors are very similar to reports. And I say that because when you look here, I have here the connections window, and I've opened the details for the dipped table. And what I see here is, in fact, a parent-child report. That's the parent report, and that is the child report with the columns. See the constraints and the columns defined here. So it is, in fact, a report. The only difference is that I've plugged it into this connection window. I defined it for a certain object type. So an editor is this, what I see here above every of these tabs is called an editor. There's another option. Instead of opening it up from the connections window, you may do that from the editor. When you see somewhere, for example, a table, an object type, you may right click, and at the lower end, you see an entry which is called pop-up describe. And when you click on it, you get a new window, and there you see all the editors defined for that object types. So the next slide shows the difference between reports and editors. The differences are highlighted. In reports, I have an ID. The ID is used when I enter bind variables. SQL Developer remembers your last entry when you search for open an Apex report and you search for application 100. Then the next time it remembered it was 100. And when you change it to 200, the next time it remembers it was 200. So this is stored separately from the report based on this ID. The editors do not need this information because editors don't have parameters. You cannot enter parameters. However, an editor is defined for a certain list of object types. You say, I'd like this detailed report for a table, for a view, for a package body. Here you define the list, the association with the editor. And then you have object types where you can associate with. In fact, all object types you see in the connection window, you can associate with an editor. Here is just an excerpt. And the link below shows you everything. Of course, I have also some bind variables. The typical bind variables are owner, type, and name of an object, and I can incorporate them in my query and so restrict the result. Because remember, I cannot enter parameters when I open an editor. It's done automatically. And there is some additional features in editor which are not available in reports. Every time if you query some sys.all objects or sys.all view, in fact, SQL Developer tries to find out, do you have access to the DBA view? If you have access to the DBA view, it will rewrite the statement. It replaces, in fact, the sys.all with DBA, and therefore the result will be a bit faster, especially on large installation where this security checks. Am I allowed to see that objects may cost you some additional milliseconds, which you feel on the GUI side? That's nice. Installation is really the same as for reports. It's just a type editor, and then you have to restart the SQL Developer again. So that's the point where I'd like to show you something live. And for the first time, I show, instead of an interactive demo, a live demo, I show a video. And I will start it right now. And we'll look at the questions you...
Okay, let's look at some user-defined extensions. I have here the connections window. And when I click on a table, I get the details. The details with a lot of editors, and here's the properties editor. That's a user-defined extension which shows some details in a table grid in a vertical representation. I have a second user-defined extension. That's the result of Daniel Porter's AshTop script. That's a SQL Plus, so better SQL CL script. And it does not really make sense to define that on a table level, but it shows what's possible, what you can do. It's not only a table representation, you can also show the result of a SQL CL script. I can do the same for the views. Click on views, and here I get the properties, some detailed information from the data dictionary. What's missing here is the AshTop script results. Why? I'll show you that later. Let's look at the last object type, package. I get here also my properties user-defined extension, but this time the properties are not vertically visualized. They are shown as a normal record, the default representation of a table grid. And when I look for the AshTop, it's not at the end, it's somewhere in the center, in the middle. And when I click on it, it doesn't work. I consider that a limitation or a bug, whatever you like. It doesn't work. But there's another option to open associated editors. You can do that from a worksheet. Let's try that for a table, for example. I click on pop-up describe, and I then get a new window. In the new window, all my associated editors are shown, also my user-defined ones, properties, and AshTop. I can do the same for the util which did not work previously. And this time I get all my results. It looks good. I get the vertical representation and also the AshTop. So where is the stuff defined? That's in the preferences on the user-defined extensions. Here, oops. All the AshTop and the properties definition as type of an editor, and they are read from a local file. In fact, I store here in this directory a clone of my GitHub repository. You may get your own clone of this GitHub repository. It's public, and try out the stuff yourself. A question I get a lot is, does it make sense to store all these user-defined extensions on a shared drive? You can do that, but it's dangerous. If SQL Developer doesn't find these files, it crashes and it won't start. So for a laptop which doesn't have access to the shared drive, this is not a good idea. So I will recommend really to read user-defined extensions from a local drive. If you want to synchronize them, use version control or rsync or whatever. Okay, let's look at the details of these files. How are they defined? Let's look at the properties first. These are the type. This is a type editor. The representation is a table grid, and a detail of the representation is vertical. And you see here the result is limited to a single row because I have object owner, I have object type, and object name as selection criteria. So it's not possible to get more than one row. So it really makes sense to choose a vertical representation. What I see here also is a lot of object types are associated with this editor. So I get it for view, I get it for table, I get it also for package. There's virtually no limitation. You can associate them with all nodes if you like. Let's look at the AshTop. The hashtop is also of type editor, but this time the style is not table, it is a script. So the result is of a SQL CL script. And it has a list of object types, but it is much smaller. It's only table and package and no view. So because of the missing view, when I clicked on the view, I did not get the result of the hashtop script. That was the reason. But what I see here is table folder. So it's also possible, I show that, to define something on a folder. And when I click here open, the table result is shown, and here's a second editor. This is my user-defined extension, which is associated on that level. When I look here at the script, I see that I go to a hard-coded directory and I call the script with hard-coded values. Usually when I have a script, it doesn't really make sense to define a hard-coded value. Sometimes I want to have the ability to change them, and that brings us to the reports. I've imported some user-defined scripts from Tenel Podder, in fact just 6. Hashtop is one of them. And when I click on such a report, SQL Developer asks me for the connection, and then I get a pop-up for every bind variables. Since I've defined default values, I just may accept them, but I have the ability, for example, to change the time and say I'm interested in the last 6 hours and run the scripts this way. What I cannot do here is change a report. I have to do that in the user-defined reports. So I'm going to import some reports, in fact the very same we've seen before. These are the 6 scripts, and now I don't want to run them, I want to edit them or at least show some values. When I open the editor for it, I see here the hashtop script with the hashtop report, which is defined as a script. Therefore, everything here is SQL Plus or SQL CL. And what I'm doing here is I'm converting all bind variables to substitution variables, named that way. So I can use the substitution variable tptdir, where's the directory of the script, to change directory. Usually I won't change that, but maybe I will change the other values as I've shown before, and I'm calling the scripts with these parameters. The advantage is by calling the scripts and not incorporating them, the script in SQL Developer, is that these two things are independent. So I can just refresh the repository of Tenel with Tenel Podder's scripts, and I don't have to change anything in SQL Developer. And I think that's neat. So let's look at the bind variables. I've defined some of them: name, prompt, default values, tooltip. What is interesting in SQL Developer, you may also test it here while you're editing a report. So I can click here on the test report. I get all these parameters. Again, when I use mouse over, I see some tooltip which says it's a date expression. I can run the report. It will be shown in a dedicated window, and I can do some changes when I'm not satisfied with my default parameters or whatever. And when I'm ready, I can apply it, I can save it, and I'm done.
Good, this was the questions. I had the chance to answer 2 questions. One I have to answer later because I cannot access my SQL Developer while I'm running this video. So I will answer the other questions later. One was, yes, see that in the Q&A yourself. Navigators. So what are navigators? Navigators are a possibility to extend the connection nodes. In this case, it's a silly example. I add a soft drinks node with some soft tricks below. So that's the idea. How do I do that? It's almost complete XML file. What I reduced here or collapsed here is just the select statement. So I explain the structure. So this is an object type soft drinks. Of course, this object type does not exist, so therefore I don't have conflicts. You see up below there, that's a weight. It gives me the position where the new node will be put in the connection tree. And for this object type, I can define an icon. This I chose here the user icon. I have to choose something which is available in the environment of SQL Developer. It's not possible to reference a PNG file outside somewhere. For that, you have to create the Java extension. For XML extension, you have to use something which is already available. There are a lot of icons, but probably not all icons for all cases you'd like. And then we have defined here a folder. And for this folder, I can also associate an icon. I used here the favorites icon, and I said for the label, I said soft drinks. In fact, I referred a resource key called soft drinks. This does not exist, and the fallback is just to show that in the fact, to show that what the resource key name is, and this way it will be displayed. The not so nice thing is that I get a warning during the execution of that extension. And then I define the query with all the details. The query looks like this. This is the expanded SQL node. It's a bit silly, but you see how it works. I can add the nodes I'd like, and here, therefore, I get these three nodes. You can query whatever you want. That's simple. The hierarchy is not limited to 2 levels. You may add as many levels as you like, but it is fixed for XML extensions. If you would like a dynamic hierarchy, then you have to create the Java extension. Then these navigators usually make sense only with additional editors. So in the meantime, we know what an editor is. We have this node here, soft drinks, and that soft drinks here is a folder. And I'd like to show some nutrition information here for every of these soft drinks. And when I click on a soft drink itself, I'd like to have 2 editors, one with the nutrition information, exactly the same row here, and another one with the ingredients for a certain soft drink. So that's something I can create really based on XML extension. I install Navigator the same way as before, just an additional type, and I have to restart SQL Developer, and everything is good. The last extension, and from my point of view, the most powerful one, is actions. What are actions? Actions allow you to add a context menu entry in a connection window. And for that connection window, when I select it, it opens up a dialog. It shows the context, what you have selected, the owner, the type is not shown, but the name is shown here. And then you have the possibility to add your own input parameters. And based on that, you can execute something and a confirmation dialog is shown. You even have the possibility to define some help text. How does the structure look like? By an example, for this example exactly. The first entry is I want to, well, maybe I should explain what I want to do. The idea is to copy an existing table with a certain percentage of a row. The first ones are just a sample of that rows. So what I need to enter is the table name. So therefore I just have this, this type, no, I have to define for which node this action is valid. So I have to define it here for that table. And it's important to notice that it's just one type. It's not a list as we have seen before for the editors, it's just one. So if I want to have an action for several objects, I have to copy that stuff. Then I define my prompts. The first prompt is the new table name. It has nothing, so defined and no additional information, so it's just a text field. Then I have the possibility to define a radio button group with the values 1, 25, 50, 75, and so on. And then the other option is that I create the list of values. If I don't define some type here of this one, but I define the list of static values, then I get a combo box. And then the next step is that I define what happens when I execute this action. And this is the option 3A. I show it with a PLS equal block. So that's the implementation. That's not really spectacular. What's interesting is I have these bind variables. It's not dot something. It's similar to Oracle Apex with the hash at the beginning and the end, uppercase. So I get this information of the context and may incorporate it in that script. And all prompts are delivered with #0 to #1, #2, as many input parameters as you have as string. So therefore you just create your script to be executed. That's the PL SQL variant. But the really, really cool stuff is that you can alternatively, instead of saying here SQL, say script, and you create here a JavaScript to be executed. And the advantage of a JavaScript to be executed is that you can access not only the database resources, you can access also the resources on your PC or the resources on the internet. So it's much, much more powerful. It's basically unlimited. You also have the possibility to incorporate additional dialogues, whatever, even an additional screen. You can do everything because you can access the whole Java environment from this JavaScript. So pay attention if you get someone and say, install just a script and run it, because it may incorporate some security risk. And the last part of the script is I have some help script here, and then in the prompt I may use all these parameters to create some kind of message. That's it. There are a lot of object types supported. You see that here, the complete list. You find a link on the GitHub repository of Oracle. And there are a lot of placeholders which you may use. An interesting one is object type names. So it's possible to select several nodes, for example, to select 5 tables and bulk delete them. This is a feature which is not available in SQL Developer, but would be possible to implement. For JavaScript variables, they are called a bit differently. The same principle, you have a prompt instead of #0 and so on, and you have access to the connection, you have access to the DB util, and in fact to a lot more variables if you want. These are just the global ones which are available. You install it the same way as we've seen before, nothing spectacular here. And I'm running out of time, that's always the same thing. But I show you just quickly the variant as PL SQL. I may hit M2, and then I click on the SQL part. I may open it up and you see what is generated. It's very, very easy to follow. And the other alternative as JavaScript, it looks exactly the same here. And when I add here M2, I see the solution as JavaScript, which will be executed. So that's it. So let's come to the core messages. And what I'm claiming here at the end of my talk is that everybody can write extensions. And the reason is because you can start with reports, and the reports it's incorporated within SQL Developer. It's very well documented. And the next thing are editors, and editors, as you've seen, are basically reports. Navigators and actions are more powerful, a bit more complicated, but to master them, to start with them, I really suggest to look at some examples. And in my GitHub library, I have examples for XML and also for Java extensions. Go there and look at them. If you have questions, open an issue there on GitHub and I will answer them as fast as I can. And if you don't get enough information, I've seen also some questions here which I could not answer. A good way to get an answer is asking in the SQL Developer space, because the SQL Developer developers itself are watching this space. Jeff Smith, the product manager, is watching that space. And if he finds something should be answered, he assigns the ticket, the question to one of his developers. So use this perfect service. It's really, really great for a free product. That's it. Thank you very much. And I'm overrun almost 5 minutes. Maybe there's still some minutes left to answer questions live. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Philipp. That was really cool. The overrun of 5 minutes was, of course, planned. No one could have said that better. Now, the thing is, there are so many things you can change. Is it really any good idea for everyone to apply changes? I mean, how can we make sure that there is not too many scripts floating around? What's the best action also within larger groups at customers or consultancies to make sure that there is not 21 versions of a very similar script? How do you manage that, for example, inside Trivardis or with your customers?
We do not really manage that inside Trivardis, but I have some experience at the customer side. And typically at the customer side, there is a group responsible for distributing SQL Developer and its extensions. And they look at the extensions they have and test them before they make a new SQL Developer environment available. And there's also a group at the customer I'm working for. We are developing explicitly Java extensions to improve their workflows. So I think there is no definite answer with everything. Look around before you try something yourself. Maybe share the stuff you have on GitHub. Ask in SQL Developer forums if somebody has already done something like that. But I cannot really answer how to manage that. My experience is that not a lot of people are using this feature. So it is said it's really very powerful, and therefore I decided to do that talk.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Philipp. With that, we close the session. And we have a few minutes break until Frank can manage to join us.